I think it's time I made good on my promise to all of you fellow SIRENIA fans regarding 1977. In consideration of a cliffhanger I left you via Wintry Heart, I did say that at some point in the near future we would be making a return to this album, though I kept mum intentionally on when, of course, and just how extensively. Though I would imagine for anyone who's familiarized to my work in the music coverage space, if you've heard similar comments offered to the credits of different artists, you would probably know exactly what I was implying, and you'd be right, if in fact what you were suspecting matches the declaration I'll offer in a minute. With SIRENIA, this was a strong temptation for me, and I couldn't avoid it, in consideration of the audience approach. I welcome the company, of course, of long-time SIRENIA fans that I know for many of you advanced me in years, for sure. SIRENIA's been around for a very long time, but I do hope that there are some of you who are approaching on a first-name basis. As with any of the artists that I consult on this channel in the music space, music, as I've said, for me is a general first love in my life. It's been for a number of years, and it's been a dream to bring it into a grander, emboldened presence here alongside other artistic languages, given, again, that specific favoritism. But the fellowship experience I found quite addicting. And with SIRENIA, that has amplified the experience in a way that I considered 1977 on its face. And the idea of this being the first full album of SIRENIA that I've entertained, of course, excites me. But to take that experience with you is perhaps even better. Again, from whatever angle you approach. And it's not often that I do this. You know, it's on a case-by-case basis for sure, depending on, again, how elated I might be and how much time my schedule offers. I try and be fair, again, to give each artist adequate time and spacing and coverage. So I tend to determine, namely, a selection. But on certain cases, I will offer a full album recognition. With SIRENIA, and I will also say as well with the full album experience, I've listened to album projects on my own, following, you know, a selection of work that I've recognized here from maybe other artists, and for me, I like the experience, it's fun, but it's just not as fulfilling as enjoying it with you. Granted, again, in a bit of an admittedly unorthodox way, but to the best of my ability, like I said, I find music to be so inspirational and reverential in art, and it's part of the reason, again, I've pushed so hard into it, is I've been in a space of wanting. Many of you know I cover a good share of artistic mediums here, and in some spaces, art is wanting. Not music, though, and certainly not anything in the European rock and metal territory. I have been so thrilled with diving deeper into that scene over the last couple of years or so, and it's been a real adventure, and one I've not regretted at all. I do hope, though, with music, that it can be, you know, inspirational for anyone who's approaching, right? That, and perhaps, if permitted, I can forge paths for you to discover new names maybe you weren't accustomed to. Talents like SIRENIA that deserve every fan they have. SIRENIA on creativity to every band member's credits is so strong, whether it be on the instrumental side with the percussion, the bass, the guitar work on behalf of Morten Wieland, or the vocal presence. I cannot get enough of Emmanuelle Zildjian. She is a real treasure of a vocalist, and I've definitely built up a love for operatic vocals in the metal space. That has emerged from Europe specifically, and I've been elated every time. Emmanuelle has become one of my favorite artists to replay constantly. I love the reach of her voice. And we'll see where, you know, 1977 goes in evolution. But as I was saying, I couldn't shake the feeling with 1977 that it would be fun, all that considered, to take my first experience in full with SIRENIA on an album with all of you. So that's what we're going to do in 1977. We're going to enjoy every track that has not yet been released but came on part of the entire album's unveiling. We're going to enjoy those together for the first time, starting with NOMADIC. I'm really interested, again, to take this journey with you. It's been fun to listen to a selection, but a first SIRENIA album in full. Couldn't avoid that, especially to share in the company with many of you who I've loved having that connection point built in regards to my music tastes. I love the element of community that music can establish, and welcoming all of you, whether you happen to be longtime SIRENIA listeners and fans or prospective listeners and first approaches. I can't wait for the experience. I envy it, and we have another opportunity. And if you've never gone down the SIRENIA road, I'll set a baseline in simplicity, Norwegian Gothic symphonic metal. You're going to really like this. I can already tell just on premise. And with the evolution of 1977, it's been an interesting album. I will say I've listened to a couple interviews and I've gotten some other insight into the album's creation. I wondered about this with some of the preceding works. This takes on a bit of a distinct flair from my understanding. I mean, Twist of My Sobriety Deadlight, and Wintry Heart have all evoked, especially on reflection, a real pop mood. With that metal background for sure, but it's much more softened. And we've checked out, like I said, a good range of SIRENIA's works. They have plenty of stuff in a harder space, maybe on a softer side, but that's more so been evolving with this work. There's a real soft feeling, especially on like Deadlight's credits. The last one kind of ramped up the speed a bit and the aggressiveness. But this album has some very interesting choices, maybe evoking a bit of a historical music feel. I specifically noted perhaps like a 70s to 90s type energy, especially on those previous works. No choir presence, I found that out, and SIRENIA choir is quite interesting, but we'll see how this plays out in the album. From what I've heard, they don't make an appearance at all here. So this is in very extensive, start that part. So this is, to a variety of factors, quite a fresh album, and a bit of a departure. But maybe it's a departure that'll be welcomed, right? 3 tracks in, I think it's quite strong. Especially on Ambition, its mainstay SIRENIA with a real pop flair, but does evoke an earlier feeling in music. Maybe Nomadic will follow that path. At least in preview, it has strong lyric writing. That matches SIRENIA. I love the storytelling. Let's match a tune to the storyline, and you can take the experience with me on the first ever SIRENIA album that I will be witnessing with all of you. I've been excited for the experience. I couldn't avoid this. Let's initiate the dive together. And if you've never humored SIRENIA, this will be your first step in that world. Though I would recommend listening to the previous works in anticipation and then maybe returning, but let this be the spark that brings you into maybe a first entertainment of the European rock and metal scene, especially of such a top-tier group in my mind. One that I cannot get enough of. I'm going to go ahead and cue up Nomadic. We can enjoy this track together for the first time alongside, as many of you know, or perhaps maybe you're not accustomed to the way I format music coverage on this channel. I do offer lyrics to suit listener tastes on screen. If you want to read along the storyline, those will be available to you as the song proceeds. But let's start our journey down 1977 in full together. I'm excited to do that. My first ever SIRENIA album in its entirety, and I'm going to enjoy the experience alongside all of you. Alright. Nomadic. Here we go. Oh, I like the strings opener already. Instantaneous. And this is coming off of Wintry Heart directly. You know, they might not have the choir present on this album, but there is that effect on the strings. And Emmanuel is playing at a lower melodic range for this rather than the operatic side. I hope it makes an appearance, we'll see. This does feel like a traditional rock song in mood. That synth placement, again, like I said, much older feeling on tone. Real 90s energy. The pacing divergence is quite interesting. I like these instrumental breaks. Again, this was a transitional verse that got us into the song. It's a good score. I'm liking this lower range of Emmanuel's voice. Again, I gravitate more to the higher inflection, but I like what she's playing with here. The strong rock riffs on behalf of the bass with Nils. Love it. Good choice, especially in matching again the effect of that twinge. It's so different. But this piece is a really sufficient progression. Interesting choices, a sync and then this nice electronic break. I'm really liking the effect of a song that, like I said, it's pleasurably dated. I really like that metal bassist, so again, that's not lost. There's independence in this album's navigation and some of its choices. But there is enough of SIRENIA on past experience, like this instrumental break, to evoke again a reminder. That's an excellent choice. Ramp up the aggression. Beautiful fit. Master application.
You can't hold me back, you can't hold me down. Can't chain my soul down to the ground. Can't break my spirit anyhow. You can't stop me up, you can't stop me in. Can't hold me down with anything. Has my spirit in the wind.
Good choice on the closure. I was curious if they'd wind that down. Simple. Almost an instantaneous break. They don't let it up and they keep that snare active. Good choices on the craftsmanship of that song. An excellent piece. And again, if they're intentionally trying to evoke, this is just kind of the conclusion that I reach. Although I think it was at least implied on one interview I saw, maybe just going off memory here roughly. And admittedly, it was more of a skimming of the interview, to be honest with you. I get quite busy in my schedule. You'll forgive me. I'll try and re-listen to it in full eventually. At least from what I heard of it, it was a good interview. Really insightful. I love digging into the heart and the mindset of the artists where permitted and expressed. Nomadic beautifully evokes, like I said, an older feel in rock music, especially again in that 70s to 90s range that I find quite classy in approach. And there is a draw of it I experience generally, again, to maybe, and it wasn't always like this. I'm not a big pop music guy. I've never been. But I like this electronic pop tone. It's really growing on me, especially in the European metal and rock regard. For me, there has to be an even balance between application of electronic emphasis and music, right? The melody cannot be lost, and it can't just be a bunch of randomized beats like what you would hear in EDM. There has to be some sort of musical skeleton. And I found with Europe, there is such exquisite integration and interplay between those two elements that have, for me, awarded a reverence that definitely departs from, past exposure in the rock scene where I'm more of a heavy guitar, thrash metal type guy. My tastes have opened up. On personality, this is just another piece that is a testament to that effect. Sufficient balancing and navigation on this tune, the instrumental opener and the verse structures, as well as that break, and the choices in the pre-chorus with that light keyboard twinge in the background, and the snare wavering later on, perfect. Just so sufficient in its navigation. And it's a beautiful song in the way that it's written. Definitely for somebody, I would say, of a free-spirited position. SIRENIA, if you're not aware, does have a realism to the navigation of their pieces, especially on an emotional, reflective mood. Maybe some take on more of like a storytelling vibe. Others are much more personal and introspective. This piece, for someone like me who is very much a free spirit and in many ways an anomaly in life, completely appeals. I see myself as a bit of a nomad. Just kind of, walking through life, a bit of a stranger, I guess, to the company of others, maybe. As I've said many times, I don't find a general relatability, with many of my peers. I am very much an individualist based on my life experiences and just my personal interests and what I favor. Especially on rock music, I don't have much cohesion in my personal life. I know that better than most, but that's why I say I 100% appreciate all of your company. Everybody who's graced my comment sections, everybody who's taken this journey with me for such beautiful music pieces and great demonstrations of art and craftsmanship. I truly do welcome your company. I feel honored to be standing in the graces of such notable talents and sharing them with you, perhaps, being that outlet that, maybe introduces you in the same way that I was introduced months ago to SIRENIA. I was like anybody else, maybe like you, who's approaching on a first-name basis. I was there where SIRENIA was just a name with suspicion of how good they would be, but I took that road. I'm so grateful that I took my free-spirited mindset and applied it to SIRENIA, and I welcomed their company. They've never let me down in terms of their offerings. I've been very impressed by the evolution of this band and growth from what I've heard of them to where we now reach in 1977, concerning at least my point of entrance. Well, not my point of entrance, this track came in a bit later, but I approached in the Invisible Dawn era, right? There's been some shifts in the lineup, over time in terms of their members. But when Emmanuel came on, right, that's the era that I've sit in. I'll dig back further, on my own at some point eventually. But I've been a fan of her since. You consider pieces like Dim Days of Dolore that introduced her, and where I was first introduced on part of the first 3 tracks off of Arcane Astral Aeons in the beginning. And it's just been a wonderful ride to experience this group in every way. And with a song like this, I think it does balance independence of vision that is materialized in 1977 again, and weaving in this type of departure tone for a pop rock chic that dates the song back in music era with SIRENIA mainstay elements. I think there's a perfect interplay, as I said, between those two sides. So if you're looking for more of that metal emphasis that SIRENIA is known for, but maybe a softer tonality, Nomadic, I think, will definitely appeal. It does to me. It's a strong piece on creativity, and I'd love to hear what your point or view is on it down below. Again, from whatever angle you approach, longtime fan or first entrance, I welcome both perspectives. I'd love to hear what your insight is on the piece, because I find Nomadic to be quite appealing. To someone like me, just on the lyrical vision, who is very free-spirited, right? And, as I've said, a wanderer in the world, kind of. I don't know. I've made it no secret on this channel when I consider any type of project that I operate from a Christian perspective to some level. So the biblical, but is it necessarily biblical theology, or is it maybe the words of my pastor paraphrased? It could be later. I'll at least attribute him. There's a phrase that he's run with, at least in the respect of faith, in that he stated something along the lines of, we're walking as strangers in a world that isn't our home, right? Now, that's maybe in the Christian perspective, and that's certainly a place I rest in a lot, at least in feeling, especially in just judging by, the world as I look at it and where I stand in it. But even just in my personal tastes and my journeys in life, I am very much a nomad. So a song, at least with this type of storytelling, directly appeals to me because it embodies, it's basically, a manifestation of how I've lived my life. And there are advantages in life to being rather isolated, or maybe to the outside eye cast adrift. Because perhaps you discover things that have not necessarily had mass connection, but deserve to, like SIRENIA. Now, again, I know they've got a great range of fans and they've been around for a while, right? Their legacy certainly, outweighs the regard I maybe summed up, and maybe I could have run a better wording there for sure, but I wouldn't have discovered them if it hadn't been for that adventurous spirit on my behalf. And I'm grateful that I've taken that pursuit with European rock metal generally, but certainly to SIRENIA's credits. And Nomadic beautifully speaks to, again, the reason why. That's exquisite an offering. It's a wonderful piece on lyrical writing and musical structuring, perfectly balances, as I said, an older mood that 1977 is trying to establish, at least in part, at least in the way that I recognize it, with that familiar SIRENIA metal presence and that atmospheric grandness that I revere. Nomadic perfectly balances each side in a way that creates such a dynamic work on individual presence. I can't wait to humor more from 1977 because, at least on introduction to the remainder of the album and what we haven't humored yet, that's a strong entrance point. Favorite piece of mine for sure. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.